Kneel and obey, soldier. That's what happens when diversity hires try playing in the big leagues. Master Sergeant Cole Ramsey's hand connected with Maya Torres's shoulder. Not a tap, but a strike meant to hurt, meant to humiliate her in front of 40 elite operators who'd stopped breathing to watch what happened next. She was 5 feet 5 inches and 135 pounds of compact muscle that had spent 4 classified years teaching CIA paramilitary officers how to kill with their bare hands. But Ramsey didn't know that. He saw a woman who didn't belong. What he got was 5 seconds of movement so precise, so devastatingly controlled, that he ended up on his knees staring at the California sky, gasping for air, while his career shattered around him like glass. If you're watching from anywhere in America tonight, drop your city in the comments. We want to see how far Maya's story travels. Hit subscribe, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about who belongs in our military's most elite training programs. This isn't just about one confrontation. This is about what happens when arrogance meets expertise no one saw coming. The morning started ordinary enough. Maya Torres arrived at the Fort Irwin National Training Center at 05:30, same as she had for 8 weeks straight. The California desert air was cool, that brief window before the sun turned the Mojave into an oven. She'd been teaching the Joint Service Advanced Combat Training course since February, and it was now mid-April. 40 students from 4 branches, Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Marine Force Recon, Air Force Special Operations, all senior NCOs and junior officers learning advanced hand-to-hand combat techniques they'd take back to their units. She walked into the instructor ready room, where 4 other combat instructors were already drinking coffee. Master Sergeant Cole Ramsey held court near the coffee maker, telling a story about a firefight in Ramadi that Maya had heard 3 times already. He was 47, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped gray hair, and the kind of presence that made people step aside when he walked through doorways. "Morning, Torres," he said without looking at her. "Morning, Master Sergeant." Marine Gunnery Sergeant Patterson, leaning against the wall, nodded. Navy Senior Chief Walsh ignored her entirely, focused on his phone. Air Force Technical Sergeant Klein was the only one who actually made eye contact and said good morning, like he meant it. Ramsey continued his story. "So there I am, 3 tangos in the room, my weapon jammed, and I had to go full combatives on these guys. Put all 3 down in under a minute. That's what real Delta Force training gets you, not this watered-down stuff we're teaching now." Maya poured coffee, said nothing. She'd learned that responding to Ramsey's jabs only encouraged him. He'd been making comments like this since week 2, when students started asking her questions during his demonstrations, when they'd started taking notes during her teaching blocks instead of just watching passively. The course director, Colonel Diaz, walked in at 05:45. He was 52, lean and intense, with 28 years of service across multiple combat deployments. "Morning. Today's schedule. Ramsey, you've got the hostile environment survival demonstration at 0900. Torres, you're assisting as role player. Klein, you're running the classroom block on tactical planning. Patterson and Walsh, you've got the afternoon practical exercises." Ramsey grinned. "Role player, huh? Good. Students need to see what happens when someone doesn't have the size or strength advantage. Real-world scenarios." Maya met his eyes. "The demonstration is on escape techniques, Master Sergeant." "Size advantages matter less when the technique is proper." "Theory versus practice, Torres. We'll see how your theory holds up." Colonel Diaz cut in. "Ramsey, the demonstration is controlled. No freelancing. You follow the script we approved." "Of course, sir. Professional standards." But Maya saw the look in Ramsey's eyes. She'd seen it before, in different men, different contexts. He was going to make a point today. The only question was how far he'd go. At 08:55, students assembled in the outdoor combat pit, a 40 by 40-foot area with padded floors, surrounded by bleachers where students could observe demonstrations. The morning sun was already heating up the desert air. Maya stood near the demonstration area in her army combat uniform, sleeves rolled to regulation standards, boots laced tight. Ramsey addressed the students, his voice carrying across the pit. "Gentlemen, today we're covering hostile environment survival. Specifically, what happens when you're captured, outnumbered, and facing an opponent who has every physical advantage. The techniques you learn today could save your life when everything's gone wrong and you've got nothing but your training." He paused, letting that sink in. "Now, I've brought Sergeant First Class Torres up here to demonstrate what happens when someone without the physical attributes tries to apply these techniques under pressure. Real pressure. Not the choreographed stuff you see in training videos." Maya felt 40 pairs of eyes on her. Several students shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the approved demonstration plan. Ramsey continued. "Torres here is what happens when the Army decides to lower standards to meet quotas. She's an instructor because of her father's name. Command Sergeant Major Marcus Kellerman, if you didn't know. Nepotism gets you a long way in today's military." The air went cold despite the rising temperature. Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept her expression neutral. Her father had died 8 months ago. Heart attack during morning PT. Using his name like this was calculated cruelty. "Master Sergeant," she said quietly, "my father has nothing to do with this demonstration." "Doesn't he? You're standing here because of connections, not capability. These students deserve to know that." He turned to the soldiers watching. "How many of you have had to meet actual standards to get where you are? No special considerations, no diversity initiatives, just pass or fail." Hands went up across the bleachers. Maya saw some students looking uncomfortable, others nodding along with Ramsey's narrative. "That's what I thought," Ramsey said. "Now let's see what happens when theory meets reality." He stepped onto the mat facing Maya. "The scenario is prisoner escape. You're captured. Your captor has size and strength advantage. You need to create distance and neutralize the threat." "Torres, assume the starting position." The approved demonstration had specific positions, specific movements. This wasn't it. "Master Sergeant, this isn't the planned demonstration," Maya said. "It's called adapting to the tactical situation, Torres. Something you'd know about if you had real combat experience instead of a training room pedigree." Colonel Diaz stood up from where he'd been observing. "Ramsey, it's fine, sir," Maya said, her voice steady. "I can demonstrate the techniques under any conditions." She saw Ramsey's smile widen. He thought she'd just made a mistake, agreeing to his scenario. "Outstanding. Students, watch closely. Torres, begin when ready." She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Ramsey immediately grabbed her shoulder, not the approved control position, but an aggressive grip designed to hurt, to dominate. "In a real situation," he announced to the students, "your captor isn't going to be gentle. They're going to use pain compliance, intimidation. Torres here probably thinks she can just ask nicely for him to let go." His grip tightened on her shoulder, fingers digging in. Maya's expression didn't change, but she felt the old injury flare. The shoulder she'd damaged 3 years ago in a training accident that still woke her up some nights. "Nothing to say, Torres? No clever techniques from your daddy's handbook?" That was the line. The one that made her decision. She'd been planning to use the approved technique, the one that was gentle and educational. But Ramsey had crossed into something else. He'd weaponized her father's memory, used her injury against her, and turned this demonstration into a public humiliation designed to destroy her credibility. Maya's voice came out cold and clear. "Students, watch the hand position.
Note how the aggressor's overconfidence creates exploitable weaknesses. Then she moved.
Her left hand snapped up, gripping Ramsey's wrist at a precise angle. Her right hand trapped his elbow. She stepped in, rotated her hips, and Ramsey's world tilted. His own forward pressure became his enemy. The joint lock she applied was technically perfect, forcing him into a position where his only options were to kneel or have his elbow dislocated. He went to his knees hard, his face hitting confusion first, then shock, then something like fear. The entire movement took less than 5 seconds. Maya held the position just long enough for every student to see it clearly, then released him and stepped back. The combat pit was absolutely silent. Ramsey knelt there, gasping, his face red. That was an unauthorized technique. I could have dislocated your elbow, Maya said, her voice still calm, still professional. I didn't. That was control, Master Sergeant. The difference between capability and application. Students, note that the technique works regardless of size differential when executed properly. The aggressor's strength becomes irrelevant. Ramsey struggled to his feet, his expression murderous.
That's it. You're done, Torres. Colonel, I'm filing a formal complaint. This soldier used dangerous, unauthorized techniques in a training environment. She's a threat to student safety. Colonel Diaz walked down to the mat, his face unreadable. Master Sergeant Ramsey, you deviated from the approved demonstration plan. You made it personal. You created the situation that required Sergeant First Class Torres to respond. She could have refused to participate. She's an instructor following orders to assist in a demonstration. You're a senior NCO who used a training evolution for personal harassment. Diaz turned to the students. This demonstration is concluded. Break for 15 minutes, then report to Classroom 3 for Technical Sergeant Klein's block on tactical planning.
Students filed out, whispering among themselves. Maya saw some looking at her with new respect, others confused, a few still skeptical. Ramsey wasn't done. This isn't over, Torres. I'm going to the commander. I'm going to the Inspector General if I have to. You don't get to assault a senior NCO and walk away. Then file your complaint, Master Sergeant, she said quietly. I'll be in the instructor office writing my statement. She walked away, her shoulder throbbing where he'd gripped it, her hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline she'd kept locked down during the demonstration. Behind her, she heard Ramsey telling Patterson and Walsh that she'd crossed a line, that she'd used techniques she couldn't justify, that her career was finished. Maya went to the instructor office, sat at her desk, and started writing her statement. She kept it factual. What Ramsey said, what he did, how she responded, why the technique she used was appropriate for the situation. She didn't mention how his words about her father had landed like physical blows. She didn't mention that she'd chosen the gentlest response in her arsenal when she could have hurt him badly. She didn't mention that every technique she'd demonstrated in 8 weeks came from 4 years of classified work at a CIA training facility where she'd helped develop combat doctrine for paramilitary officers operating in denied areas. She couldn't mention that. It was still classified. Her phone buzzed. Text from Colonel Diaz. My office, 1300 hours. Bring your statement. Maya finished writing, printed the document, and sat back in her chair. Through the window, she could see students gathering in small groups, probably discussing what they'd witnessed. Ramsey was holding court with Patterson and Walsh near the parking lot, his gestures animated, his face still red. The door opened. Air Force Technical Sergeant Klein came in, closed it behind him. That was impressive, he said. I've seen Ramsey intimidate a lot of instructors. You're the first one who didn't back down. He gave me no choice. You could have walked away, refused to participate, and validated everything he said about me? That I'm here because of connections, not capability? Maya shook her head. No. He wanted to make an example of me. He got one. Just not the example he wanted. Klein sat on the edge of the desk. You know he's not going to let this go. He's got friends in high places. Former Delta guys stick together. Let him file his complaints. I responded appropriately to an aggressive training scenario. Torres, I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying to warn you. Ramsey doesn't play fair. He's going to make this about you being dangerous, unstable, unqualified. He's going to use every contact he has. Then I'll deal with it. Klein studied her for a moment. There's something about you. The way you move, the way you teach. You're not just some infantry NCO who went through combatives instructor school. Where did you really learn that stuff? Maya met his eyes. I'm not authorized to discuss previous assignments beyond what's in my official record. That's what I thought. Klein stood up. Whatever happens with Ramsey, you've got at least one instructor who will back your version. What he did was unprofessional and personal. Students saw it. I saw it. I appreciate that, Technical Sergeant. After Klein left, Maya sat alone in the office. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from a number she didn't recognize. Saw what happened at the demonstration. Ramsey's an asshole. You handled it perfectly. Ranger student, name withheld. Then another. That technique was clean. Where'd you learn that? SEAL student. Then another. My sister's in the Army. Showed her what women can do. Thank you. Marine student. Maya didn't respond to any of them. Instructors didn't fraternize with students, didn't seek validation from them. But she saved the messages. At 1300 hours, she reported to Colonel Diaz's office. He was behind his desk, her statement in front of him, his expression neutral. Sit down, Torres. She sat. I've received Master Sergeant Ramsey's complaint. He's alleging you used unauthorized techniques, that you assaulted him during a training demonstration, and that you pose a danger to students and fellow instructors. Sir, my statement addresses... Diaz held up a hand. I've read your statement. I've also pulled the security footage from the combat pit. All 3 cameras captured the incident clearly. He turned his monitor so she could see it. The footage showed Ramsey gripping her shoulder aggressively, showed his mouth moving as he made comments the cameras didn't capture audio for, showed her controlled response and immediate release. That, Diaz said, is a textbook application of appropriate force in response to an aggressive training scenario. Ramsey created the situation through unprofessional conduct. You responded with control and precision. Then you released him before causing any injury. Maya felt something unclench in her chest. However, Diaz continued, Ramsey is a senior NCO with significant credibility in the special operations community. He's already made calls to people at Fort Bragg, at Dam Neck, at Special Operations Command. He's framing this as a dangerous instructor who needs to be removed before someone gets hurt. Sir, I've never injured a student or fellow instructor in 8 weeks of teaching. I know that, but Ramsey's building a narrative, and he's got 3 other instructors who will support his version. Patterson, Walsh, and now probably others he's called in favors from. What are you saying, sir? Diaz leaned back in his chair. I'm saying this is bigger than a training incident. This is about credibility, institutional politics, and whether we're going to let one senior NCO's ego destroy a competent instructor's career. He paused. Tell me about your shoulder, Torres, the one Ramsey grabbed. Maya's hand instinctively moved to her right shoulder. Old injury, sir. Training accident 3 years ago. Surgical repair, full recovery. What kind of training accident requires surgery at a facility that doesn't appear in your official medical records? The room went very quiet. Sir, I'm not authorized. I know you're not authorized to discuss certain assignments. I've been a colonel for long enough to recognize when someone's service record has gaps that don't make sense. infantry NCO, Ranger School graduate, then 3 years of training development at an unspecified location. Then suddenly you're here teaching techniques that SEALs and Rangers find innovative. Maya said nothing. I'm not asking you to violate classification, Diaz said. I'm telling you that Ramsey's complaint is going to force a deeper investigation. And if there's anything in your background that would help your case, now would be the time to let me know who I should contact. Maya thought about the point. About 4 years teaching CIA paramilitary officers how to survive when everything went wrong. About the techniques she'd developed that were now classified doctrine. Sir, I can provide a contact number for my security clearance officer. They can confirm that my training development assignment was legitimate, and that my instructor credentials are appropriate for this position. That's what I needed to hear. Diaz picked up his phone. Get me someone from the post commander's office. We're going to do this by the book, and we're going to do it right. Maya left the office 30 minutes later, with orders to continue her teaching duties, but to avoid any interaction with Ramsey outside of required instructor meetings. She went back to the instructor office, gathered her materials for the afternoon session, and found Ramsey waiting outside. You think you won today, he said, his voice low. You think that little stunt makes you legitimate. But I've been in this business for 23 years. I know people at every level. By the time I'm done, you'll be teaching basic training at Leonard Wood, not instructing special operations personnel. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, saw past the bluster and the anger to something else. Fear. He was afraid she'd exposed something about him, made him look weak in front of students, revealed that his credentials couldn't protect him from being wrong. Master Sergeant, she said quietly, I didn't do this to win. I did this because you made comments about my dead father and used the training demonstration to humiliate me. You created the situation. I just responded with appropriate control. Your father was a Ranger. You think that name protects you? It doesn't. It just makes you a nepotism hire trading on someone else's reputation. My father taught me that respect is earned through consistency and competence, that you don't ask others to do what you won't do yourself, that the standard matters more than the noise around it. She met his eyes. You want to file complaints? File them. You want to call in favors? Call them. But nothing you do will change what happened today. Students saw that technique work. They saw controlled application of force, and they saw which one of us maintained professional standards. She walked past him into the instructor office, closed the door, and finally let herself shake. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This is Brigadier General Patricia Hendricks, Army Special Operations Command. Colonel Diaz provided your contact. We need to discuss your classified service record and current situation. Call this number at 1700 hours today. This is not optional. Maya stared at the message. General Hendricks was the deputy commander of RSOC. She didn't make personal calls to staff sergeants unless something significant was happening. At 1700 hours, Maya called the number from a secure line in Colonel Diaz's office. Sergeant First Class Torres. General Hendricks's voice was calm and professional. I've been briefed on today's incident. I've also pulled your complete service record, including the portions that require special access. Ma'am, You didn't intend to be publicly humiliated by a has-been Delta operator who's been dining out on credentials for 5 years? You didn't intend to demonstrate that the classified training you provided to CIA personnel translates effectively to conventional special operations instruction? Maya said nothing. Torres, here's your situation. Master Sergeant Ramsey has called in favors from people who matter. He's building a case that you're dangerous and unqualified. What he doesn't know is that I've spent the last 4 hours talking to your former commanding officer at the point, reviewing your training development work and confirming that every technique you've taught at Fort Irwin is approved doctrine that's already being used by Ground Branch and Special Activities Center. Ma'am, I'm not finished. Ramsey wants an investigation? He's going to get one. But it's not going to be the investigation he expects. Colonel Diaz is implementing a mandatory instructor validation exercise. Every combat instructor at Fort Irwin will demonstrate teaching effectiveness, technical proficiency, and performance under realistic conditions. All of you. No exceptions. Maya felt her stomach drop. Ma'am, I can't reveal classified training without authorization. You won't have to. I'm authorizing limited disclosure of your training development background to a select evaluation team. Not the full details, but enough to establish your credentials are legitimate and your techniques are approved at the highest levels. Master Sergeant Ramsey will fight this. Let him fight. He's about to learn that the military doesn't care about his feelings. It cares about whether instructors can actually teach combat-effective techniques that keep soldiers alive. General Hendricks paused. Torres, your father was Command Sergeant Major Marcus Kellerman. I served with him in Afghanistan in 2009. He was one of the finest NCOs I ever met. What Ramsey said about him today was disgraceful. Maya's throat tightened. You knew my father? I did, and he'd be proud of how you handled yourself today. You didn't escalate beyond necessity. You demonstrated control. You maintained standards even when someone was trying to break you. Another pause. The validation exercise starts in 48 hours. Be ready to demonstrate everything you know. And Torres, don't hold back this time. The call ended. Maya sat in the empty office as evening settled over Fort Irwin. In 48 hours, she'd have to prove herself all over again. But this time, it wouldn't be to someone trying to humiliate her. This time, it would be to evaluators who understood exactly what she'd been trained to do. And Master Sergeant Cole Ramsey was about to learn that the woman he'd tried to destroy had been keeping secrets that would make his Delta Force credentials look like participation trophies. The validation exercise briefing happened at 0600 hours in the main conference room. Maya arrived early, found Colonel Diaz already there with 3 people she didn't recognize. One was a woman in civilian clothes with the posture of someone who'd spent decades in uniform. The other 2 were men, one Navy, one Army, both wearing minimal insignia that told her exactly nothing about who they really were. Ramsey walked in at 0559, Patterson and Walsh flanking him like bodyguards. He saw the strangers and his confidence faltered for just a second before the mask came back up. Gentlemen, ladies, Colonel Diaz began. This is the evaluation team for the instructor validation exercise. I'll let them introduce themselves. The woman in civilian clothes stood. She was maybe 55, gray hair pulled back, eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. I'm Director Sarah Chen. That's all you need to know about my current position. What you should know is that I've spent 30 years evaluating training programs across the Department of Defense and other agencies. The Navy officer went next. Commander Blake Foster, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. I evaluate instructor performance for SEAL training programs. The Army officer was last. Command Sergeant Major Robert Hayes, 75th Ranger Regiment. I assess combatives' training effectiveness across special operations. Ramsey relaxed slightly. These were his people, special operations evaluators who'd understand real credentials, real experience. Maya saw him exchange a look with Patterson that said he thought this would go his way. Director Chen continued. This validation will assess every aspect of instructor performance: teaching effectiveness, technical proficiency, tactical judgment, performance under stress, and professional conduct. Every instructor currently assigned to this course will participate. Results will be documented and provided to your respective commands. Ma'am, Ramsey said, with respect, I've been teaching combat techniques for 8 years. My credentials speak for themselves. Master Sergeant, credentials get you in the door. Performance keeps you there. You'll have the same opportunity as every other instructor to demonstrate your capabilities. Chen's voice was pleasant, but final. The exercise begins tomorrow at 600. Be prepared for 3 days of continuous evaluation. After the briefing, Maya went to the gym. She needed to move, needed to think through what was coming. The shoulder was bothering her more than usual. Ramsey's grip yesterday had aggravated old damage. She was halfway through a workout when Technical Sergeant Klein found her. "Got a minute?" he asked. Maya stopped mid-push-up. "What's wrong?" "Ramsey's not taking this well. He was on the phone for 2 hours last night. Called everyone from his old Delta team, people at Bragg, even reached out to some retired general who used to run JSOC. Let him make his calls." "Torres, you don't understand. He's telling people you're dangerous, that you attacked him without provocation, that you've been teaching unauthorized techniques that could get students killed." Klein sat on a nearby bench. "He's building a narrative where he's the experienced operator trying to maintain standards, and you're the diversity hire who's in over her head." Maya resumed her push-ups. "The evaluation will show the truth." "Will it?" Because Ramsey's convinced Patterson and Walsh to back his version. They're going to testify that you've been teaching reckless techniques, that students have raised safety concerns, that you've shown poor judgment. Klein paused. They're lying, obviously. But if 3 instructors say the same thing, evaluators have to take it seriously. Maya finished her set, stood up. "Then I'll have to perform well enough that their lies don't matter." "That's not how investigations work. They're not just evaluating your teaching. They're evaluating your judgment, your character, your fitness to instruct special operations personnel." "I know what they're evaluating." Maya grabbed her water bottle. "Klein, I appreciate the warning, but I've been questioned before. I've been tested before. I'll handle this." Klein studied her. "That classified assignment, the one you can't talk about. It was serious, wasn't it?" "I can't discuss it." "You don't have to. I can see it in how you move, how you teach. You've done things most instructors only read about in doctrine manuals." He stood. "Just be careful. Ramsey's not just trying to discredit you. He's trying to destroy you." After Klein left, Maya finished her workout and headed back to her quarters. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is CSM Hayes from the evaluation team. Need to speak with you privately. Coffee shop off post, 1900 hours. Come alone." Maya stared at the message. Evaluators weren't supposed to meet with subjects privately before an assessment. This violated every protocol she knew. She texted back, "Is this official?" The response came immediately. "No, but necessary. Your father and I served together. You need to know what you're walking into." Maya's chest tightened. Her father had served with so many people over 28 years that she couldn't track them all. But if this man knew Marcus Kellerman well enough to invoke his name, maybe she should listen. At 1900 hours, she drove to a coffee shop 15 minutes from base. Command Sergeant Major Hayes was already there, out of uniform, wearing jeans and a polo shirt. He was probably 60, lean and weathered, with scars on his hands that spoke of decades in hard places. Maya sat across from him. "You knew my father?" "Afghanistan, 2007. He was Regimental Sergeant Major for 75th Rangers. I was a company first sergeant. He saved my life during an ambush in Helmand Province." Hayes slid a photo across the table. 2 younger men in combat gear, arms around each other's shoulders, both grinning. Maya recognized her father immediately. Her throat closed up. "I've never seen this picture." "He gave me a copy right before we redeployed. Said if anything happened to him, I should make sure his daughter knew he died doing what he loved." Hayes pulled the photo back. He talked about you constantly, how you'd gone to ranger school, how you'd passed on your first try, how proud he was that you met the standard without excuses. Why are you telling me this? Hayes leaned forward. Because tomorrow, you're walking into an evaluation designed to destroy you. Ramsey's got friends on the evaluation team, not me, not Foster, but he's made calls to people who matter. He's framing this as a dangerous instructor who needs to be removed before she gets students killed. Director Chen seems professional. Chen is professional. She's also under pressure from people above her pay grade, who've been told by Ramsey's Delta buddies that you're a problem. Hayes paused. Your father taught me that when someone tries to break you, you don't defend, you attack. You make them prove their accusations, while you prove your competence so thoroughly they look like fools. I'm planning to do exactly that. Are you? Because I've read your official service record. Infantry NCO, Ranger School, 3 years of vague training development work, then instructor duty. On paper, you're qualified, but not exceptional. Ramsey has Delta Force, multiple combat deployments, instructor credentials from every special operations school in existence. On paper, he wins the credibility fight. Maya's hands clenched around her coffee cup. My training development work was classified. I can't discuss it. I know it was classified. I also know that General Hendricks authorized limited disclosure to the evaluation team. But limited disclosure means they know you did something classified, not what you actually did or how good you were at it. Hayes met her eyes. Torres, I'm breaking protocol by meeting with you, but your father would have wanted someone to look out for you. So here's what you need to know. Ramsey's planning to throw the first 2 evaluation events. Deliberately perform poorly so he can claim the stress got to him, that he's human, that even experienced operators have bad days. Why would he do that? Because then, in the final events, he'll perform at his actual level. He'll show vulnerability, followed by competence. It's a psychological play. Makes him look honest and self-aware, while making your consistent high performance look robotic and suspicious. Hayes pulled out his phone, showed her a text message. It was from a number she didn't recognize. Ramsey told Patterson the plan. Struggle early, dominate late. Make Torres look like a machine instead of a teacher. Where did you get this? Patterson's getting cold feet. He doesn't want to be part of destroying someone's career over Ramsey's ego. He sent this to a mutual friend, who sent it to me. Hayes put the phone away. You can't use this information directly, but you can adjust your strategy. Don't just demonstrate technical proficiency. Show humanity. Show teaching moments. Show that you're not a robot executing techniques, but an instructor who cares about whether students survive. Maya absorbed this. Why are you helping me? Because your father helped me when no one else would. Because I've watched Ramsey's type destroy good soldiers for 20 years, and I'm tired of it. And because, Hayes paused, seemed to make a decision. Because I've seen the techniques you teach. I sat in on 3 of your classes before this evaluation started. What you're teaching isn't just good. It's better than what we're currently using in Ranger Regiment. And if Ramsey destroys you, those techniques disappear with you. He stood to leave, then turned back. One more thing. There's a 4th evaluator arriving tomorrow. Someone Ramsey doesn't know about. Someone who specifically requested to observe your performance. I don't know who it is, but General Hendricks personally approved their participation. That tells me it's someone significant. After Hayes left, Maya sat in the coffee shop for another hour, thinking. Ramsey was playing psychological games, manipulating the evaluation, calling in favors. He wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to make sure she couldn't. Her phone buzzed. Text from General Hendricks. The 4th evaluator is someone from your previous assignment.
They've been authorized to provide context the others don't have. Don't acknowledge them publicly. Trust the process. Maya's heart rate kicked up. Someone from the point.
Someone who knew what she'd actually done, how she'd actually trained, what her capabilities really were. The next morning at 05:45, all 5 instructors assembled in the combat pit. The evaluation team was there, plus one new person, a man in civilian clothes, maybe 50, with the build of someone who'd spent a lifetime in special operations. He didn't introduce himself, just nodded at Director Chen and took a seat away from the other evaluators. Maya recognized him immediately. Jack Morrison, former CIA Special Activities Division, now running training programs at the point. He'd been her commanding officer for 2 years. He'd watched her develop techniques, test them under live fire conditions, train officers who'd go into denied areas with nothing but what she'd taught them. He met her eyes for half a second, his expression neutral, then looked away. Ramsey noticed the 4th evaluator but didn't seem concerned. Just another observer, probably someone's administrative requirement. Director Chen stood. First evaluation. Teaching effectiveness under observation. Each instructor will teach a complex technique to 4 students with no prior experience. Students will be selected randomly. You'll have 20 minutes to teach. Then, students will demonstrate the technique against full resistance from a qualified opponent. Scoring is based on percentage of successful executions. Ramsey went first. He selected a weapon retention technique, technically sound but complex, requiring precise timing and multiple steps. His teaching was confident but rushed, demonstrating the technique twice, then having students practice. When test time came, 2 of 4 students successfully executed against resistance. 50% success rate. Patterson taught an armbar escape. Clear instruction, but not adaptive. When one student struggled with grip strength, Patterson just told him to be stronger. 3 of 4 successful executions, 75%. Walsh taught a choke defense. Solid fundamentals, but no troubleshooting when students made mistakes. 2 of 4 successful, 50%. Klein taught a basic takedown with excellent breakdown of mechanics. All 4 students successful, 100%. Maya was last. She drew 4 students, 2 Rangers, 1 SEAL, 1 Marine. All physically capable, but with different builds, different strengths. We're learning a technique called the vertical control break, she said. Used when someone grabs you from the front with superior height and weight. The instinct is to pull away. That doesn't work. Instead, we're going to use their force against them. She demonstrated slowly. Watch my hand position. I'm not grabbing their hand. I'm controlling the elbow, the wrist. Small movements that redirect large forces. One of the Rangers, a big kid, maybe 23 years old, raised his hand. Sergeant First Class, what if they're too strong? What if I can't control the elbow? You're not controlling it through strength. You're controlling it through angle and timing. Let me show you. Maya had him grab her in the starting position. He was 6 feet 2 inches and probably 220 pounds. She was 5 feet 5 inches and 135. Grab me like you mean it. Don't hold back. He gripped her shoulders hard. Maya's injured shoulder flared, but her expression stayed calm. Feel how tight his grip is? Now watch. She moved, not fighting his strength, but redirecting it. His grip became his weakness. The elbow control forced him off balance. He stumbled forward, releasing automatically. Again, she said. This time watch my feet. I'm not pulling. I'm stepping offline and using his forward momentum. They practiced for 15 minutes. Maya circulated, corrected small details, adapted the technique when the smaller Marine struggled with the larger opponents. If you don't have the reach, control the wrist first, then transition to elbow. Different entry, same result. Test time. All 4 students executed successfully against full resistance. 100%. Jack Morrison made a note. So did Commander Foster. Ramsey's jaw tightened. Second evaluation came after lunch, performance after physical stress. Each instructor ran an 8-mile course with 40-pound rucksack, then immediately demonstrated their primary teaching specialty. Ramsey finished first, barely winded. His demonstration afterward was strong but rushed, movements precise but explained poorly. He was showing off, not teaching. Maya finished fourth, her shoulders screaming by mile 6. When she demonstrated her techniques afterward, her breathing was controlled, her movements economical, her explanations clear despite obvious fatigue. Command Sergeant Major Hayes watched her carefully. So did Morrison. That evening, Maya was walking back to her quarters when Patterson intercepted her. "We need to talk," he said, glancing around to make sure they were alone. "I don't think that's appropriate during an evaluation." "Torres, just listen. Ramsey's planning something for tomorrow. The tactical problem-solving event. He's got a scenario prepared that's designed to make you fail." "How do you know?" "Because he asked me to help design it. A hostage situation with impossible parameters. You can't save everyone. You have to choose who dies. He thinks you'll freeze or make an emotional decision. He's going to present a ruthless but tactically sound solution that accepts casualties as necessary." Maya studied him. "Why are you telling me this?" Patterson looked miserable. "Because I've got a daughter. She's 17. She wants to join the Marines. And watching Ramsey try to destroy you for being good at your job, it's making me think about what kind of Marine Corps I want her to join." He paused. "I'm not going to back Ramsey's lies anymore. I'm telling the evaluation team the truth tomorrow. That you're a good instructor. That his complaints are personal, not professional." "That'll end your friendship with him?" "Good. It should have ended when he asked me to lie." After Patterson left, Maya sat on her bunk and finally let herself feel the exhaustion. 3 days of constant evaluation, constant performance, constant scrutiny. Her shoulder hurt. Her legs hurt. Everything hurt. Her phone buzzed. Text from Morrison. "Need to talk. Secure line. Call this number in 10 minutes." Maya used the secure phone in the duty office. Morrison answered immediately. "Torres, I've been watching you teach for 2 days. You're better than when you left the point." "Sir, I can't discuss—" "I'm not asking you to discuss anything. I'm telling you that tomorrow's evaluation is the critical one. Tactical problem solving under pressure. They're going to give you a scenario with no good answers. Ramsey's expecting you to either freeze or make an emotional choice he can criticize." "Patterson already warned me." "Patterson doesn't know the full scenario. I do. They're going to present a hostage situation with 20 civilians and actionable intelligence that a high-value target is in the building. Rules of engagement say you can accept up to 30% civilian casualties if it means eliminating the HVT. Ramsey's going to argue for immediate assault, accepting the casualties as necessary. He's going to frame it as hard but necessary decision-making." Maya's stomach sank. "What's the right answer?" "There isn't one. That's the point. It's a test of how you handle impossible choices under pressure." Morrison paused. "But here's what I know about you. At the point, you developed tactical patience that saved lives. You taught officers to gather intelligence before acting, to use time as a weapon when they had it. That's what I need you to remember tomorrow." "They'll say I'm indecisive." "Let them. Then show them why patience wins." The next morning, the tactical problem-solving evaluation began. Each instructor was given the same scenario: 20 civilian hostages, 1 confirmed HVT, limited intelligence, political pressure to resolve quickly. Ramsey went first.
His solution was aggressive and immediate. We breach from 3 points simultaneously, overwhelming force. Accept calculated civilian casualties to ensure HVT neutralization. Mission success trumps humanitarian concerns. That's the reality of special operations. Director Chen asked, "How many civilian casualties are acceptable?" "Up to the ROE limit. 6 deaths. It's ugly, but it accomplishes the mission." Commander Foster made notes. Morrison's expression was unreadable. Maya went last. She looked at the scenario, looked at the evaluators, and made her choice. "I establish outer containment first. Lock down egress routes so the HVT can't escape. Then I use drone and thermal surveillance to gather more intelligence about hostage positions and HVT location within the building."
This buys time to develop a precision strike plan that minimizes civilian casualties while still ensuring mission success.
"That takes too long," Ramsey interrupted. "The political pressure requires immediate action."
Maya looked at him. Political pressure doesn't change physics. A rushed assault kills hostages. A patient approach with better intelligence saves lives and still accomplishes the mission. She turned to the evaluators. "I've seen rushed operations fail. I've seen patient operations succeed. Time is a weapon when you have it. We have it here." Director Chen leaned forward. "What if the HVT escapes during your intelligence gathering phase?" "That's why we establish containment first. He can't escape if we control every exit. And if intelligence reveals he's preparing to execute hostages, we have response teams positioned to breach immediately. Patience doesn't mean passivity. It means acting from a position of knowledge instead of assumption." Morrison asked his first question of the entire evaluation. "Where did you learn that approach?" Maya met his eyes, understanding what he was really asking. "From operations where patients saved lives and rushing killed them, sir." The room went quiet. That night, after the day's evaluations concluded, Maya found a note slipped under her door. "Final evaluation tomorrow. Full contact technical demonstration. Be ready for anything. Hayes." She crumpled the note and lay on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. One more day. One more test. Then this would be over, one way or another. Her phone buzzed. Text from her security clearance officer. "General Hendricks has authorized Morrison to testify about your work at the point if necessary. Limited disclosure, but enough to establish your credentials. He'll make that decision based on how tomorrow goes." Maya closed her eyes and thought about her father. About Command Sergeant Major Marcus Kellerman, who'd taught her that the standard mattered more than the noise around it. Tomorrow, she'd find out if meeting that standard was enough. The final evaluation day started with news that spread through Fort Irwin like wildfire. Walsh had withdrawn from the instructor program entirely, submitted his resignation effective immediately. No explanation, just gone. Patterson found Maya in the instructor office at 0530, looking shaken. "Walsh couldn't handle it," Patterson said. "Ramsey pushed him to fabricate a safety incident report about you. Wanted him to claim he'd witnessed you injure a student during training. Walsh refused, and Ramsey told him he was either with him or against him." Maya looked up from her coffee. "So he chose neither." "He chose not to lie. That's something." Patterson sat down heavily. "Torres, I need you to know, I've told the evaluation team everything." "How Ramsey's been undermining you since week 2. How he coordinated with me and Walsh to question your credentials in front of students. How he planned yesterday's demonstration to humiliate you." He paused. "I'm probably done as an instructor after this." "You did the right thing." "Did I? Because it feels like I'm just trying to save my own career by betraying someone I called a friend." Patterson's hands shook slightly.
He called me last night, said I was dead to him, said everyone in the Marine Special Operations community would know I'm a traitor.
He's scared, Patterson. People who are winning don't threaten. They don't have to. Before Patterson could respond, Colonel Diaz walked in. Torres, Patterson. Evaluation team wants everyone assembled in 15 minutes. Final event's been modified. Maya's stomach tightened.
Modified how, sir?
They're not telling me. Just said to have all instructors ready for full contact demonstration under adverse conditions. Diaz met her eyes. Whatever happens today, remember you've already proven yourself. The rest is just documentation. At 0600, all 4 remaining instructors stood in the combat pit. The evaluation team was there, plus Jack Morrison, plus 2 new people Maya didn't recognize, both in civilian clothes, both with the look of people who'd seen serious action. Director Chen stood. Final evaluation has been restructured based on new information received last night. Instead of individual demonstrations, we're conducting integrated scenario testing. Each instructor will face a progressive resistance opponent in protective gear. Scoring is based on technical execution, control, and teaching effectiveness under maximum stress. Ramsey smiled. This was his element. Full contact, physical dominance, proving strength. Chen continued. However, there's an additional component. After your demonstration, you'll teach the technique you just used to a student, who will then execute it against you. This tests whether your techniques are actually teachable or just dependent on your personal attributes. Ramsey's smile faded slightly. Teaching someone to beat him wasn't part of his plan. Master Sergeant Ramsey, you're first. Ramsey stepped onto the mat. His opponent was a Marine Recon gunnery sergeant, probably 6 feet 1 inch and 210 pounds, wearing protective headgear and body armor. They squared off. The fight lasted 90 seconds. Ramsey won through superior aggression and strength, put the Marine down with a chokehold that was technically sound, but brutal in application. The Marine tapped hard 3 times. Now teach that technique to this student, Chen said, gesturing to a smaller soldier, a female Army specialist, maybe 5 feet 4 inches and 125 pounds. Ramsey's confidence cracked. Director Chen, that technique requires significant strength advantage. It's not appropriate for. Teach it, Master Sergeant. Or concede that your techniques only work for people built like you. Ramsey spent 10 minutes trying to teach the choke. The specialist couldn't generate enough force to make it effective. When she tested it against the Marine opponent, he easily defended and countered. Ramsey's face went red. With all respect, this test is unrealistic. Combat isn't fair. Size matters. Combat isn't fair, Morrison spoke for the second time, his voice cutting across the pit. But training should give everyone tools that work, regardless of their physical attributes. That's the difference between teaching combat and teaching survival. Klein went next, demonstrated a solid armbar, taught it effectively to a student who executed it successfully. 70% effectiveness score. Patterson chose a basic takedown, taught it well. Student succeeded. 75%. Then it was Maya's turn. Her opponent was the biggest ranger in the student class, 6 feet 4 inches, 230 pounds, all muscle and attitude. He'd been one of Ramsey's most vocal supporters, one of the students who'd questioned Maya's credentials. They faced each other on the mat. Maya saw the evaluation team watching intently, saw Ramsey's expression. He was hoping she'd fail, hoping the size difference would expose her. "Begin when ready," Chen said. The ranger came forward aggressively, trying to use his reach advantage. Maya didn't retreat. She closed distance, got inside his range where his size became a liability instead of an asset. His hands came up to grab her. She redirected one arm, controlled the elbow, stepped offline, and used his forward momentum against him. He went down hard, flat on his back, Maya's knee on his chest, and her hand controlling his arm at an angle that made resistance impossible. The whole thing took maybe 6 seconds. She released him and helped him up. His expression had changed from confident to shocked. "Now teach it," Chen said. Maya's student was a Navy SEAL lieutenant. Athletic, but not huge. Maybe 5 feet 10 inches and 175 pounds. What you just saw works because of angle and timing, not strength. Let me break it down. She spent 15 minutes teaching the technique, explaining not just the mechanics, but the why behind each movement. When someone bigger comes at you, they're confident in their size. That confidence creates predictable movement. We're going to exploit that predictability. The SEAL practiced against progressively larger opponents. By the end of the teaching block, he successfully executed the technique against the same ranger Maya had demonstrated on. The evaluation team conferred quietly. Morrison made extensive notes. The 2 unknown civilians watched Maya with interest that felt more than professional. Chen stood. "We're taking a 15-minute break. When we return, we have a special final evaluation designed specifically for this circumstance." During the break, Morrison pulled Maya aside. "Those 2 civilians are from Langley. They're reviewing whether your techniques from the point should be incorporated into formal CIA training curriculum. Your performance today is essentially a job audition, whether you know it or not." Maya's chest tightened. "Sir, I'm Army. I'm not looking to transfer to—" "You're not transferring anywhere. They're proposing you develop curriculum that both DoD and CIA can use. You'd stay Army, but work on joint training development. It's what you did before, just no longer classified." Morrison paused. "But that only happens if today goes well." When everyone reassembled, Chen had brought in someone new, a woman in Army ACUs, colonel's rank, with a build that said she'd spent time in combat arms. She looked familiar, but Maya couldn't place her. "This is Colonel Andrea Mitchell," Chen said, "former commander of the 75th Ranger Regiment, now serving at Special Operations Command. She's here to administer the final evaluation personally." Maya's breath caught. Colonel Mitchell was a legendary. First female battalion commander in Ranger Regiment, multiple combat deployments. Someone who'd broken barriers through undeniable competence. Mitchell's voice was calm but carried authority. "I've reviewed the evaluation results so far. I've also reviewed Master Sergeant Ramsey's complaints about Sergeant First Class Torres. Those complaints allege that Torres teaches unauthorized techniques, shows poor judgment, and poses a danger to students." She paused. "I'm here to test those allegations directly." Ramsey straightened. Finally, someone who'd understand his concerns. Mitchell continued. "Master Sergeant Ramsey, you claim Torres's techniques are unauthorized and dangerous. I'm going to have you demonstrate what you consider proper technique. Then Torres will demonstrate her approach to the same scenario. Students will evaluate which technique they'd rather use in actual combat." "Ma'am, with respect, students don't have the experience to. These students include Rangers, SEALs, and Marine Recon with multiple combat deployments. I think they can evaluate combat effectiveness." Mitchell's tone made it clear this wasn't a debate. "The scenario is close quarters defensive response when someone attacks you without warning and you're unable to retreat. Ramsey, demonstrate first." Ramsey selected his approach, aggressive counterattack, meeting violence with superior violence. His demonstration was technically proficient and undeniably effective if you had his size and strength. He put his opponent down hard. "Torres, your approach to the same scenario." Maya faced a different opponent, equally large, equally aggressive. He came at her fast. She didn't meet force with force. She redirected it, used his momentum to put him off balance, transitioned to a control position that neutralized the threat without excessive force. Mitchell addressed the students. "Hands up if you'd rather use Ramsey's technique." 10 hands went up. "Hands up if you'd rather use Torres's technique." 28 hands went up. Ramsey's face went dark. "Ma'am, this isn't a popularity contest." "You're right, it's not. It's a practical assessment of which techniques are more broadly applicable across different body types and situations." Mitchell turned to the evaluation team. "I've seen enough. Director Chen, I'd like to provide testimony for your final report." Chen nodded. "The evaluation is officially concluded. We'll compile results and provide them to respective commands within 48 hours. All instructors are dismissed except Ramsey and Torres. We need final statements from both of you." Klein and Patterson filed out. Maya saw Patterson give her a small nod of support. Then it was just her, Ramsey, and the evaluation team. Chen spoke first. "Master Sergeant Ramsey, your technical proficiency is not in question. However, multiple evaluators noted that your techniques rely heavily on physical attributes that not all students possess. Additionally, testimony from Gunnery Sergeant Patterson and security footage from the initial incident show a pattern of unprofessional conduct toward Sergeant First Class Torres." Ramsey started to protest. Colonel Mitchell cut him off. "I served with your Delta Squadron commander in Afghanistan. I called him last night. He said you were a solid operator until your injury. He also said you've been struggling with the transition to teaching, that you've been fixated on proving you still matter." Mitchell's voice softened slightly. "Master Sergeant, you do still matter. But teaching isn't about proving yourself. It's about preparing others." "Ma'am, Ramsey's voice cracked. "I spent 20 years earning my place. Then one bad landing destroyed my knee, and suddenly I'm teaching instead of operating." Watching Torres walk in here with her credentials hidden, watching students respect her techniques, it felt like everything I'd accomplished meant nothing. "So you tried to destroy her to make yourself feel relevant again," Morrison said bluntly. "Master Sergeant, I watched you operate in Iraq. You were good, but good operators know when to adapt. You didn't adapt. You attacked." Director Chen pulled out a folder. "Master Sergeant Ramsey, based on evaluation results and testimony, we're recommending you be removed from advanced instructor duties and reassigned to basic training instruction, where you can focus on fundamental skills teaching. You'll undergo remedial training in teaching methodology and professional conduct. Your Delta Force credentials remain valid, but your instructor certification is suspended, pending successful completion of remediation." Ramsey looked like he'd been shot. "You're ending my career over this?" "We're giving you a chance to learn how to teach properly," Chen said. "You can accept the reassignment, or you can retire. Your choice." Ramsey stood there, his world collapsing. Finally, he looked at Maya. "I was wrong about you. I was wrong about a lot of things. But I'm not going to apologize and pretend that makes it okay. I tried to destroy your career because mine was already destroyed, and I couldn't handle it." It was the first honest thing he'd said in weeks. "Master Sergeant," Maya said quietly, "your career isn't destroyed. It's just different now. Teaching matters. It's how we keep the next generation alive. That's not a demotion. It's a different kind of service." Ramsey's eyes went glassy. He nodded once, then turned and walked out of the combat pit. Chen turned to Maya. "Sergeant First Class Torres, your evaluation results are exceptional. Highest teaching effectiveness scores, highest technical proficiency, best performance under stress, and unanimous student preference for your techniques." She paused. "However, there's a complication." Maya's stomach dropped. "Ma'am, your classified training background, Multiple evaluators noted that your techniques exceed standard Army combatives doctrine. We need to address that officially before we can make recommendations about your future assignments. Morrison stood. Director Chen, I'm authorized to provide limited disclosure about Sergeant First Class Torres's training development assignment from 2018 to 2022. The room went very quiet. Morrison continued. Torres was assigned to a joint DoD-CIA training facility where she helped develop hand-to-hand combat doctrine for special operations personnel operating in denied areas. Her work included technique development, instructor training, and testing under live-fire conditions. The techniques she teaches at Fort Irwin are approved doctrine. They're just not yet broadly disseminated across conventional forces because the development program remained classified until this year. Colonel Mitchell leaned forward. You're telling us she was developing techniques for Ground Branch and Special Activities Center? Among others, yes, ma'am. Her shoulder injury, the one Master Sergeant Ramsey exploited during his demonstration, occurred during a training accident at that facility. She completed 6 months of rehabilitation, returned to duty, and finished her assignment before rotating to Fort Irwin. One of the CIA civilians spoke for the first time. Mr. Morrison, we'd like to discuss incorporating Sergeant Torres's curriculum into formal agency training programs. Her techniques show promise for our operational requirements. Chen held up a hand. Before we discuss future assignments, let's complete the current evaluation. Sergeant First Class Torres, based on your performance and newly disclosed background, we're recommending you for immediate promotion to Master Sergeant and assignment to the Special Operations Center of Excellence as Senior Combatives Curriculum Developer. You'd be responsible for updating hand-to-hand combat training across all Special Operations branches. Maya felt dizzy. Ma'am, I'm not sure I'm qualified for— You're uniquely qualified, Colonel Mitchell interrupted. You've done this work before, at the highest classification levels. Now we need you to do it openly. The military needs instructors who can teach techniques that work for everyone, not just physically dominant soldiers. You've proven you can do that. Morrison added, the assignment comes with security clearance upgrade, access to all special operations training facilities, and authority to review and modify existing doctrine. It's essentially making your previous classified work across the entire DoD. Maya thought about her father, about Command Sergeant Major Marcus Kellerman, who'd taught her the standard was the standard. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about every soldier who'd deploy with techniques that actually worked when everything went wrong. I accept the assignment, ma'am. Chen stood. Congratulations, Master Sergeant Torres. Effective immediately. Your orders will be processed within 72 hours. Dismissed. Maya walked out of the combat pit into California sunshine that felt different somehow, brighter. She saw Klein waiting near the parking lot. How bad? He asked. Ramsey's reassigned to basic training. I'm being promoted and sent to Special Operations Command. Klein's eyes widened. They're promoting you? After he tried to destroy you? They're promoting me because I proved what I can do. What he tried to destroy me for is exactly why I'm valuable. Maya looked back at the combat pit. Klein, can I ask you something? If you'd been in Ramsey's position, injured, forced into teaching instead of operating, watching someone younger and different get respect you thought you'd earned, what would you have done? Klein thought about it. I'd like to think I would have adapted, but honestly, I don't know. The military teaches us we're only valuable when we're operational. When that ends, some guys don't know who they are anymore. He paused. Ramsey wasn't evil. He was broken. And he broke you to feel whole again. He didn't break me. He just revealed what I'd been keeping hidden. Maybe that's what needed to happen. Maybe you needed to stop hiding. That evening, Maya was packing her gear when Patterson found her. Torres, I heard about the promotion. Congratulations.
Thank you. I heard you're staying on as an instructor.
For now, they're keeping me under review, probably to make sure I'm actually reformed and not just covering my ass. Patterson sat on a nearby footlocker. I owe you an apology. A real one. I knew what Ramsey was doing was wrong, and I went along with it because it was easier than standing up to him. That makes me almost as guilty as he is. You stood up eventually. That counts for something. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, I only found my conscience when my career was on the line. Patterson's voice was bitter. Walsh had the guts to walk away rather than lie. I waited until I had cover to tell the truth. That's not courage. That's cowardice with better timing. Maya studied him. Patterson, you've got a daughter who wants to join the Marines. What are you going to tell her about what happened here? I don't know. That her dad was part of something ugly and didn't stop it soon enough. Tell her that institutions protect people who do wrong until someone has the courage to break rank. Tell her that courage doesn't always look heroic. Sometimes it looks like admitting you were wrong and trying to make it right. Tell her that she'll face moments where doing the right thing costs her friendships and reputation, and she should do it anyway. Maya paused. Tell her that the Marine Corps needs people who will stand up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Patterson's eyes were wet. You're better than me, Torres. Better than all of us. I'm not better. I just had better teachers. And now, I'm going to try to teach what they taught me. After Patterson left, Maya made one final stop. The post cemetery, where her father was buried. She'd only visited twice since his funeral, the grief too raw to handle more frequently. She stood at his headstone. Command Sergeant Major Marcus Kellerman, 28 years of service, Silver Star, 3 bronze stars with V device. Beloved father. I got promoted, Dad, she said quietly. They're sending me to Special Operations Command. I'm going to help update combat training across all the branches. She paused. Master Sergeant Ramsey, the guy who tried to destroy me, he's being reassigned. But I don't think I won. I think the system just corrected itself, and I happened to survive the correction. A voice behind her said, Your father would disagree. Maya turned. Colonel Mitchell stood there, having approached silently. Ma'am, I didn't hear you. I served with your father in Afghanistan. He saved my life during an ambush in Khost province. Took shrapnel protecting my position while I called for air support. Mitchell moved to stand beside Maya, looking at the headstone. He talked about you constantly. His daughter, who'd passed Ranger School on her first attempt. His daughter, who met the standard without excuses. He taught me the standard was all that mattered. He taught you more than that. He taught you that meeting the standard was just the beginning, that the real work was helping others meet it too. Mitchell turned to face her. Master Sergeant Torres, the assignment we're giving you is enormous. You'll face resistance from old guard instructors who think their way is the only way. You'll face skepticism from people who think you're too young, too inexperienced, too different. Some of that skepticism will be valid. I understand, ma'am. I don't think you do. Because this isn't just about updating techniques. It's about changing culture. The military has operated on physical dominance models for generations. You're proposing we shift to technical proficiency models that work regardless of physical attributes. That threatens people who built their identities on being physically dominant. Maya absorbed that. So how do I handle the resistance? The same way you handled Ramsey. You don't fight it directly. You prove it wrong through undeniable results. You teach techniques that keep soldiers alive. You document success rates. You let the data speak. Mitchell paused. And when they try to break you, and they will try, You remember that your father didn't die teaching you to give up when things got hard. After Mitchell left, Maya stood at her father's grave for a long time, thinking about the journey ahead. New assignment, new challenges, new people who'd doubt her until she proved herself all over again. Her phone buzzed. Text from Morrison. First day at new assignment is Monday. Come prepared to teach everything you know. Also, Ramsey called me. He wants to know if there's room in the basic training instructor program for someone who needs to relearn how to teach. I told him if he's serious about changing, we'll make room. Thought you should know. Maya smiled slightly. Maybe Ramsey would learn. Maybe he wouldn't. But at least he was trying. And that was more than he'd done before. She touched her father's headstone one last time. The standard is the standard, Dad. I'm going to help make sure everyone can meet it. Not just the people who look like they should. Monday morning came fast. Maya reported to the Special Operations Center of Excellence at Fort Liberty at 0700, carrying everything she'd learned at the point, everything she'd proven at Fort Irwin, and all the weight of expectation that came with being the first. Her new commanding officer was a brigadier general she'd never met, and as she walked into his office, she realized the real work was just beginning. Brigadier General Lawrence Harding stood when Maya entered his office, which caught her off guard. Generals didn't stand for master sergeants. He was maybe 58, lean with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many memorial services. Master Sergeant Torres, sit down. We've got a lot to discuss and not much time to do it. Maya sat. Sir, I'm ready to begin curriculum development whenever... You're not developing curriculum. Not yet. Harding pulled out a thick folder and dropped it on his desk with a sound like a judge's gavel. This is every hands-to-hand combat technique currently being taught across Army Special Operations. Ranger Regiment, Special Forces, 161st SOAR, Civil Affairs, Psychological Operations. 147 distinct techniques across 12 different schools and training programs. Maya stared at the folder. Sir, I thought I'd be updating existing doctrine. 43 of those techniques are outdated. 17 are actively dangerous if applied incorrectly. 8 are completely ineffective against opponents who know basic defensive counters. And 22 directly contradict techniques being taught at other schools, which means we've got operators from the same command using incompatible training. Harding leaned forward. Your job isn't to update doctrine, Master Sergeant. Your job is to fix a fundamentally broken training system before more soldiers deploy with techniques that'll get them killed. Maya's chest tightened. Sir, that's a much larger scope than I anticipated. You think I don't know that? You think I'd give this assignment to someone who wasn't ready? Harding opened the folder, pulled out a report. This is from Jack Morrison at the Point. He says you spent 4 years developing techniques that are now standard across CIA paramilitary operations. 0 technique-related fatalities in 3 years since your doctrine was implemented. 0. You know what the DoD's rate is? No, sir. Classified, but I'll tell you it's not 0. We've had operators die because the hands-to-hands techniques they learned in training didn't work under real-world stress. We've had mission failures because soldiers couldn't execute the complex techniques they'd been taught when exhausted or injured. Harding's voice was hard. You're here because you know how to teach techniques that actually work for actual people in actual combat, not theoretical warriors in controlled training environments. Sir, I'll need access to instructors at each school, access to their current lesson plans. You've got it. Full access, full authority to review and modify. But here's the problem. Those instructors don't know you're coming, don't know their techniques are being questioned, and most of them have been teaching the same methods for 10 to 20 years. They're not going to welcome someone telling them they've been doing it wrong. Maya absorbed that.
What's my timeline?
6 months to conduct full review. Another 6 to develop and test updated curriculum. Then we implement across all schools simultaneously. Harding paused. But there's a catch. The schools have to voluntarily adopt your curriculum. I can't force them. Which means you need to prove your methods work so convincingly that senior instructors will choose to replace techniques they've taught for decades. How am I supposed to do that, sir? By demonstrating your techniques against their best instructors in front of senior leadership. By showing that your methods work better, faster, and more reliably than what they're currently using. By being so undeniably effective that they have no choice but to adopt your curriculum or look negligent for refusing. Maya felt the weight of what he was describing. Sir, that's going to create resistance, resentment. Some instructors will see it as a personal attack on their credibility. Good. Let them be resentful. Let them resist. Because when their resentment runs into your results, results win. And if they can't handle being wrong, they shouldn't be teaching soldiers whose lives depend on being right. Harding stood. Your first site visit is tomorrow. Ranger School at Fort Moore. You'll observe their current hand-to-hand combat instruction, then brief the commandant on what needs to change. Questions? Just one, sir. Why me? There are senior instructors with more experience, more rank, more credibility in the special operations community. Harding's expression softened slightly. Because everyone else I considered for this job has too much invested in the current system. They've taught these techniques, defended these techniques, built their reputations on these techniques. You're the only instructor I found who has no stake in being right about the old way, because you've already proven there's a better way. He paused. Also, your father. Marcus Kellerman taught me as a young lieutenant that the standard is the standard. No exceptions, no excuses. I need someone who'll apply that principle even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Maya left the office with the thick folder and a travel authorization to Fort Moore. She spent that evening reading through current Ranger School hand-to-hand combat curriculum, and what she found made her stomach hurt. Some techniques were solid, others were outdated by 15 years, and several were variations of methods she'd specifically proven ineffective during testing at the point. The next morning, she flew to Fort Moore and reported to the Ranger Training Brigade headquarters. The brigade commander, Colonel Vincent Shaw, was waiting with the hand-to-hand combat chief instructor, a master sergeant named Derek Cross. Cross was 46, built like a tank, with 24 years in regiment, and the kind of presence that made people step aside. He looked at Maya the way someone might look at an audit notice from the IRS. Master Sergeant Torres, Colonel Shaw said. Master Sergeant Cross will give you full access to observe training. You'll have 2 days to conduct your review, then you'll brief me on your findings. Cross's jaw was tight. Sir, with respect, Master Sergeant Torres just got here. She hasn't seen our training in action. How can she evaluate effectiveness without understanding context? That's why she's observing, Master Sergeant. To understand context before making recommendations. After Shaw left, Cross turned to Maya. Let me be clear about something. I've been teaching hand-to-hand combat to Rangers for 12 years. I've trained over 2,000 students. My techniques have been used successfully in combat across 3 continents. So when you observe my training, remember that you're watching proven methods, taught by someone who's actually applied them downrange. Maya kept her voice neutral. I'm not here to attack your credibility, Master Sergeant. I'm here to review curriculum for potential updates. Updates. Right. That's what they told us before they sent the diversity and inclusion trainers through to make sure we weren't being too aggressive in our language. Cross's tone was bitter. Let me guess, you're going to find that my techniques are too violent, too focused on physical dominance, not inclusive enough for smaller soldiers. Master Sergeant Cross, I don't care about politics. I care about whether techniques work when everything goes wrong and soldiers need to survive. If your techniques do that, I'll document them as effective. If they don't, I'll recommend changes. It's not personal. Everything's personal when someone shows up questioning 20 years of your professional work. The observation started that afternoon. Cross taught a class of 50 Ranger students in week 4 of the course, all of them exhausted from constant training and sleep deprivation. The technique was a weapon retention sequence, what to do when someone tries to take your rifle. Cross demonstrated confidently. His movements were aggressive and powerful, relying heavily on strength to maintain weapon control. When students practiced, the bigger ones succeeded. The smaller ones struggled. One student, a kid maybe 5 feet 8 inches and 160 pounds, kept losing his weapon to larger opponents. Cross pulled him aside. You need to hit the gym harder, Ranger. Build more strength. This technique requires you to be stronger than your opponent. Maya watched silently, making notes. The technique worked, if you were big enough. For smaller soldiers, or soldiers facing significantly larger opponents, it was nearly useless. After the class, Cross found her. Well, what'd you think? The technique is sound for soldiers with strength advantages, less effective for others. Combat isn't fair. Sometimes the bigger, stronger guy wins. That's reality. It is reality. But our job is to give soldiers tools that work even when they don't have physical advantages. Your technique leaves a significant percentage of students without reliable options. Cross's face darkened. You got a better method? I'd like to demonstrate an alternative approach tomorrow, if you're willing to compare effectiveness. Fine. Tomorrow morning you can show us what you've got. But you're going to demonstrate on me, in front of my students, using full resistance. No controlled demonstrations, real pressure. Can you handle that? Maya met his eyes. Yes, Master Sergeant. I can handle that. That evening, she called Morrison from her hotel room. I'm at Fort Moore. The chief instructor here wants to test me in front of his students tomorrow. Full resistance, public demonstration. Morrison laughed. Of course he does. Let me guess. He's been teaching the same techniques for years and sees you as a threat to his credibility. Exactly. Torres, you've trained CIA officers who operate in denied areas against foreign intelligence services. You've tested your techniques under live fire conditions. Some Ranger instructor trying to embarrass you in front of students is nothing compared to what you've already proven you can do. I know that. But if I humiliate him, I lose any chance of getting him to adopt new curriculum. He'll resist out of pride. So don't humiliate him. Demonstrate the technique effectively, then teach him why it works better than his approach. Make him part of the solution instead of the problem. Morrison paused. But Torres, if he comes at you trying to prove you don't belong, you put him on his ass. Respectfully, professionally, but definitively. Because he's not the only instructor watching this. Word spreads fast in the special operations community. The next morning, Maya arrived at the training pit at 700. 50 Ranger students were already there, plus Cross and 3 other instructors. Word had spread. Everyone wanted to see the new Master Sergeant who was reviewing their curriculum. Cross addressed the students. Rangers, this is Master Sergeant Torres from Special Operations Command. She's here to evaluate our hand-to-hand combat training. She claims she has better techniques than what we're currently teaching. I've invited her to demonstrate. He turned to Maya. Master Sergeant, you ready? Maya stepped onto the mat. The scenario is weapon retention. I'm carrying a rifle. Master Sergeant Cross is going to attempt to take it from me using maximum force. I'm going to demonstrate a retention technique that doesn't rely on strength advantage. Cross picked up a training rifle, handed it to Maya. Don't hold back on my account. I can take it.
"I won't, Master Sergeant." She gripped the rifle in a standard carry position. Cross moved in fast, using his size and strength to grab the rifle and yank hard. Most people would have tried to pull back, fighting strength with strength. Maya didn't. She rotated the rifle along its axis, stepped offline, and used his pulling force to off-balance him. Before he could adjust, she'd controlled his elbow and put him in a position where continuing to hold the rifle meant joint damage. He released instinctively. The whole thing took maybe 4 seconds. The students went silent. Maya helped Cross up. "The technique works because I used your force against you instead of fighting it directly. You pulled, I redirected. Your strength became my advantage." Cross rubbed his elbow, his expression a mix of surprise and something that might have been respect. "Do that again. Slower. I want to see the mechanics." For the next hour, Maya broke down the technique, explaining each component. She demonstrated on Cross repeatedly, showing how the same principle worked against different types of attacks. Then she taught it to students. The smaller ranger who'd struggled yesterday was one of the first to successfully execute the technique against a larger opponent. His expression when it worked was something close to revelation. After the class, Cross pulled Maya aside. "That technique is better than mine. It's more reliable, works for more body types, and doesn't fatigue soldiers as quickly." He paused. "I hate admitting that." "You don't have to hate it. You can just adopt the better technique and teach it instead." "You make it sound simple. You know how many rangers I've taught my method to? Thousands. And now I'm supposed to admit I've been teaching them something less effective for 12 years? Maya chose her words carefully. "Master Sergeant, techniques evolve. What worked in 2010 gets refined by 2025. Adopting better methods isn't admitting failure. It's demonstrating commitment to giving soldiers the best tools available." That's a nice way of saying I've been teaching outdated doctrine. That's a way of saying you taught the best doctrine available at the time. Now there's better doctrine. Your choice is whether to keep teaching the old way because it protects your pride, or teach the new way because it protects soldiers' lives. Cross was quiet for a long moment. "If I adopt your curriculum, what happens to me? Do I get replaced by someone who already knows your methods?" Maya understood the real fear. "Master Sergeant, I don't want to replace anyone. I want to train instructors to teach updated methods. You'd go through instructor certification on the new curriculum. Then you'd continue teaching Rangers. Same job, better tools. And if I can't learn the new techniques? If I'm too old or too set in my ways? Then we figure out what role best uses your experience. Maybe you teach other components of Ranger training. Maybe you help develop scenarios or evaluate student performance. But I'm not here to end careers. I'm here to update training." Cross stared at her. "You really believe that?" "Master Sergeant Cross, my father taught me that good leaders don't destroy people for being wrong. They help people get better. I'm trying to be a good leader." That afternoon, Maya briefed Colonel Shaw on her findings. She documented 17 techniques that needed updates, provided alternatives for each, and outlined an implementation plan that included instructor training rather than instructor replacement. Shaw listened carefully. "Master Sergeant Torres, I'm approving your recommendations. Master Sergeant Cross and his team will attend your instructor certification course when it's developed. But I need you to understand something. Cross isn't unique. You're going to face this same resistance at every school you visit. Instructors who've built careers on current methods, who see change as personal attack." "I understand, sir." "Do you? Because next week you're visiting Special Forces Qualification Course at Fort Liberty. Their chief instructor is Command Sergeant Major Ray Palmer. He's been teaching hand-to-hand combat for 18 years. He's trained more Green Berets than anyone alive, and he's already called me asking why some unknown master sergeant is reviewing his program." Maya's stomach tightened. "What did you tell him, sir?"
I told him you're authorized by Special Operations Command to review all training programs, and he'll provide full cooperation. He responded that he'll cooperate professionally, but that he's not changing techniques that have worked for 2 decades without seeing proof they need changing. So he wants another demonstration. He wants a fight. He wants to prove in front of his students and his chain of command that his methods are superior, and he's going to use every advantage he has, rank, experience, credibility, to make sure you fail. Maya thought about what Morrison had said. If someone tries to prove you don't belong, put them on their ass. Then I'll have to prove him wrong, sir. That's what I'm counting on. But Torres, understand what you're walking into. Palmer isn't like Cross. Cross was defensive but honest. Palmer is political. He's connected. He's got friends at 3-star level. If you embarrass him, he'll make your assignment hell. The next week, Maya arrived at Fort Liberty and reported to the Special Forces qualification course. Command Sergeant Major Palmer was waiting in his office, 59 years old, built like he'd spent 4 decades moving heavy things, with eyes that assessed her like a threat. Master Sergeant Torres, I've heard about you. Heard you demonstrated some fancy techniques at Fort Moore. Heard Derek Cross is considering changing his entire curriculum based on one demonstration. Command Sergeant Major, I demonstrated alternative techniques that showed better effectiveness across different body types. Master Sergeant Cross made his own decision about their value. Cross is young, impressionable. I'm not. Palmer stood, walked around his desk. Let me tell you how this is going to work. You want to review my program? Fine. You'll observe 3 days of training. You'll see techniques that have been refined over 20 years of real-world application. Then you'll write your report. But you're not demonstrating anything to my students, and you're not questioning my methods in front of them. Command Sergeant Major, my orders from General Harding authorize me to— I don't care what your orders say. This is my schoolhouse. These are my students. And I'm not having some master sergeant with 4 years of classified training that nobody can verify show up and undermine 2 decades of proven instruction. Maya kept her voice level. I'm not here to undermine anyone. I'm here to ensure students receive the most effective training available. My training is effective. 0 complaints in 18 years. Multiple combat applications across every theater we've operated in. Students pass, they deploy, they succeed. That's effectiveness. Command Sergeant Major, may I ask you a question? Ask. When was the last time you updated your hand-to-hand combat curriculum? Made significant changes based on new information or improved techniques? Palmer's jaw tightened. The techniques I teach are foundational. They don't need constant updating because fundamentals don't change. Respectfully, fundamentals don't change, but our understanding of how to teach them, how to make them work for different body types, how to apply them under different stress conditions, that understanding absolutely changes. And if we're not incorporating those improvements, we're giving students inferior training. Inferior? Palmer's voice went cold. You think my training is inferior? I think some techniques could be more effective. That's not an attack on you. It's an observation based on testing and development work I've done. Palmer moved closer, using his size to intimidate. Here's what I observe, Master Sergeant. I observe someone with minimal instructor experience showing up to question people who've forgotten more about training than she's ever learned. I observe someone getting promoted fast and given authority she hasn't earned through years of service. And I observe the same pattern that's been destroying military training for a decade. Political correctness valued over combat effectiveness. Maya felt anger rising, but kept it locked down. Command Sergeant Major, this has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with whether techniques work. Then prove it. Tomorrow morning, you and me, Full demonstration in front of my senior instructor cadre. You demonstrate your superior techniques. I demonstrate mine. We let the instructors evaluate which methods are actually superior. You willing to do that? Maya knew this was a trap. Palmer would set conditions that favored his techniques, would frame the demonstration to make her look ineffective, would use his rank and experience to influence how instructors evaluated performance. But refusing would mean losing all credibility with his staff. I'm willing, Command Sergeant Major, but I have one condition. We use the same scenario parameters, same opponent size, same resistance level, same performance metrics. No advantage to either of us beyond technique effectiveness. Palmer smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Agreed. Tomorrow, 0800, Training Pit 4. Don't be late. That night, Maya called Morrison again. Palmer's challenging me to a demonstration tomorrow. Full performance in front of his instructor cadre. He's going to use every advantage to make me fail. Then don't fail. Torres, you've beaten better operators than Palmer under worse conditions. Stop being afraid of embarrassing people who are trying to embarrass you. I'm not afraid of embarrassing him. I'm afraid of making an enemy who can sabotage the entire curriculum update. Morrison's voice went hard. Listen to me. There are two ways this goes. Either you prove your techniques work and Palmer accepts it, or you prove your techniques work and Palmer fights you anyway. Either way, you have to prove your techniques work. Stop trying to manage his ego and start demonstrating undeniable competence. And if that destroys any chance of getting him to cooperate? Then you go around him. You get his instructors to adopt your methods. You get his chain of command to mandate changes. You do your job even when people make it hard. That's what leadership is. Maya hung up and spent the evening reviewing her notes on Palmer's current curriculum. She knew what he'd demonstrate tomorrow, aggressive, strength-based techniques that worked brilliantly if you were built like him. Her job was to prove that different didn't mean inferior. That techniques optimized for all soldiers were better than techniques optimized for physically dominant soldiers. The next morning, Training Pit 4 was full. Palmer's entire instructor cadre, 12 senior NCOs with decades of combined experience, plus students who'd somehow heard about the demonstration and shown up to watch. Palmer stood in the center, confident and commanding. Gentlemen, we're here to evaluate two different approaches to hand-to-hand combat instruction. I'll demonstrate our current methods. Master Sergeant Torres will demonstrate her proposed alternatives. Scenario is hostile detainee control. Subject is resisting. You need to gain compliance without excessive force. I'll go first. Palmer's demonstration was technically proficient and brutally effective. He controlled his opponent through superior strength and aggressive techniques that left no doubt who was in charge. It worked. But Maya noticed that several smaller students watching looked uncomfortable, probably realizing they couldn't replicate those techniques against larger opponents. Your turn, Master Sergeant, Palmer said, stepping back. Maya faced the same opponent, a Green Beret student who was 6 feet 2 inches and probably 210 pounds. She used different principles entirely. Instead of fighting his strength, she controlled his balance. Instead of aggressive force, she used precise angles that made his size irrelevant. She gained compliance in less time than Palmer, with less effort, and in a way that obviously worked regardless of size differential. The instructors watching exchanged glances. Some looked impressed. Others looked uncomfortable, like they were watching something that threatened beliefs they'd held for years. Palmer's expression was dark. Impressive technique, Master Sergeant. Let's try a different scenario. Opponent is armed with edged weapon. Disarm and control. For the next 2 hours, Palmer called scenario after scenario, each designed to favor his strength-based approach. And each time, Maya demonstrated that technical precision beat physical dominance when both were properly applied. By the end, even Palmer's most loyal instructors were asking Maya questions about her techniques, wanting to understand the mechanics. Palmer finally called halt. "That's enough. Instructors will discuss what we observed in private. Master Sergeant Torres, you're dismissed." Maya walked out, knowing she'd proven her point, but uncertain whether Palmer would accept it. 2 hours later, she got her answer. Colonel Shaw called her. "Torres, Command Sergeant Major Palmer just submitted a formal complaint to Special Operations Command. He's alleging you conducted unauthorized demonstrations, undermined his authority in front of his staff, and attempted to force curriculum changes without proper approval process." Maya's chest went cold. "Sir, General Harding authorized me to—" "I know what Harding authorized. Palmer knows too. But he's fighting back the only way he can, through bureaucratic channels. He's demanding a formal review of your credentials, your training background, and your authority to modify special operations curriculum." "What does that mean for my assignment?" "It means you're going to spend the next month defending yourself instead of updating curriculum. It means Palmer's friends at senior levels are going to question whether we should let one Master Sergeant change training that's been standard for decades. And it means—" Shaw paused. "It means you need to decide whether this assignment is worth fighting for. Because Palmer and people like him aren't going to surrender quietly. They're going to make you prove yourself over and over until they can't deny it anymore." Maya thought about her father, about Command Sergeant Major Marcus Kellerman, who'd taught her the standard was the standard. She thought about soldiers deploying with inferior training because instructors were too proud to change. "Sir, it's worth fighting for. Tell me what I need to do." The formal review hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later at Special Operations Command headquarters. Maya spent that time documenting everything. Technique effectiveness data from the point, student performance metrics from Fort Moore, comparative analysis of current versus proposed curriculum. She built a case so thorough that dismissing it would require willful ignorance. General Harding called her into his office 2 days before the hearing. "Palmer's gotten support from 2 other command sergeants, Major, and a retired Major General who used to run Special Forces Command. They're arguing that your proposed changes undermine decades of proven training, and that one Master Sergeant shouldn't have authority to override institutional knowledge." "Sir, the data shows—" "I know what the data shows, but this isn't about data anymore. It's about power. Palmer and his allies see you as a threat to their legacy. They've spent careers building these training programs, and you're telling them those programs are inadequate." Harding pulled out another folder. "They're also questioning your classified background. They want full disclosure of what you did at the point, who you trained, what techniques you developed. They're claiming they can't evaluate your credibility without that information." Maya's stomach dropped. "Sir, that work is still classified. I can't—" "I know you can't, which is why I've invited someone to testify at the hearing who can provide context without violating classification." Harding smiled slightly. "Someone Palmer won't be able to dismiss as biased in your favor." The hearing took place in a conference room that felt like a courtroom. Maya sat at one table with General Harding and Colonel Shaw. Palmer sat at another with Command Sergeant Major Vincent Hayes from Ranger Regiment, the same Hayes who'd warned her about Ramsey, plus CSM Thomas Bradford from Special Forces, and retired Major General William Crane, who'd commanded USASOC 5 years earlier. The review board consisted of 3 general officers Maya had never met. The senior member, Lieutenant General David Morrison, no relation to Jack Morrison, opened the proceedings. "This hearing is to evaluate proposed changes to Special Operations hand-to-hand combat curriculum as developed by Master Sergeant Maya Torres. Command Sergeant Major Palmer has raised concerns about the scope, authority, and foundation of these proposed changes. We're here to determine whether the changes should proceed, be modified, or be suspended." He turned to Palmer. Command Sergeant Major, present your concerns.
Palmer stood, his bearing command perfect. Sir, my concern is that we're allowing one master sergeant with limited instructor experience to override training methods developed over decades by hundreds of instructors who've actually applied these techniques in combat. Master Sergeant Torres may have theoretical knowledge, but theory doesn't survive contact with reality. My techniques have survived 20 years of reality. General Morrison looked at Maya.
Master Sergeant Torres, respond.
Maya stood. Sir, Command Sergeant Major Palmer's techniques have survived because they work for soldiers who match his physical profile. Large, strong, aggressive. But they work less effectively for soldiers who don't fit that profile. My proposed curriculum includes techniques that work regardless of physical attributes, which means more soldiers have effective tools when things go wrong.
Major General Crane leaned forward. Master Sergeant, you claim your techniques are superior, but you've been teaching for less than a year at Fort Irwin, and now you've spent a few weeks visiting other schools. Command Sergeant Major Palmer has 18 years of instructor experience. Why should we trust your judgment over his? Sir, because I've spent 4 years testing techniques under conditions most instructors never experience. I've documented what works and what fails when operators face opponents who are skilled, prepared, and trying to kill them. That testing happened at a classified facility where failure meant fatalities, not just training injuries. This classified facility you can't discuss, Crane said skeptically. How convenient that we can't verify your claims. The door opened. Jack Morrison walked in, wearing civilian clothes but carrying himself like the operator he'd been. He handed credentials to General Morrison. Sir, I'm authorized to provide testimony regarding Master Sergeant Torres's classified training background. I commanded the facility where she worked from 2018 to 2022. The room went silent. Morrison examined the credentials, looked at the other board members, then nodded. Please proceed. Jack Morrison, Maya had to keep thinking of him by his full name to avoid confusion with the general, addressed the board. Master Sergeant Torres spent 4 years at a joint DoD-CIA training facility, developing combat techniques for special operations personnel operating in denied areas. Her work included testing techniques under live fire conditions, training paramilitary officers, and documenting effectiveness across hundreds of operational scenarios. The techniques she developed are now standard training across CIA Special Activities Center and have been used successfully in classified operations across 4 continents. Palmer interrupted. With respect, even if that's true, CIA operations are different from military operations. Different rules of engagement, different operational parameters. Command Sergeant Major, I've worked with your graduates downrange. I've worked with Rangers, Green Berets, SEALs, and Marine Raiders. The best operators from all branches share one characteristic. They use techniques that work regardless of conditions, regardless of opponent size, regardless of whether they're fresh or exhausted. Master Sergeant Torres teaches those techniques. You teach techniques that work when conditions favor you. Morrison's voice was hard. That's the difference between adequate training and exceptional training. CSM Bradford spoke up. Mr. Morrison, you're asking us to change training that's been validated through 2 decades of combat operations, based on 4 years of classified work we can't fully evaluate. That's a significant ask. Then evaluate it publicly. Set up a demonstration. Have your best instructors demonstrate their techniques. Have Master Sergeant Torres demonstrate hers. Let students, the people whose lives depend on this training, choose which techniques they'd rather have when everything goes wrong. General Morrison considered this. That's actually not a bad idea. Command Sergeant Major Palmer, would you be willing to participate in a comparative demonstration? Palmer's expression said he knew this was a trap, but refusing would look like weakness. Yes, sir. I'm confident my techniques will prove superior. Master Sergeant Torres?
Yes, sir.
Then we'll reconvene in 3 days at the Special Operations Training Facility. We'll conduct controlled demonstrations, have students evaluate effectiveness, and base our decision on observable results rather than theoretical arguments. After the hearing adjourned, General Harding pulled Maya aside. You know what Palmer's going to do, right? He's going to spend 3 days preparing the best possible demonstration. He's going to select scenarios that favor his techniques. He's going to stack the deck in every way possible.
I know, sir. But if my techniques are really better, they'll prove it even under unfavorable conditions.
And if they don't?
Maya thought about her father, about all the times he'd told her the standard was the standard. Then I'll learn from it and develop better techniques. But sir, I've tested these methods against foreign intelligence officers, against operators from allied nations, against people who were actively trying to prove them wrong. They work. Palmer just hasn't seen it yet because he's been teaching the same way for so long he can't imagine there's a better way.
The 3 days before the demonstration felt like preparing for combat. Maya reviewed every technique, practiced until her shoulder ached, and ran through mental scenarios of how Palmer might try to make her fail. On the morning of the demonstration, she arrived at the Special Operations Training Facility to find not just the review board, but over 100 students from different special operations schools. Word had spread. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a referendum on whether military training could evolve or whether institutional momentum would keep teaching the same methods forever. Palmer was already there with his cadre of senior instructors, all looking confident and prepared. General Morrison addressed the assembled group. We're here to evaluate 2 different approaches to hand-to-hand combat training. This isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about determining which methods best prepare soldiers for combat. We've selected 5 scenarios that represent common close-quarters combat situations. Each will be demonstrated by Command Sergeant Major Palmer and Master Sergeant Torres. Students will then attempt to replicate each technique. Effectiveness will be measured by percentage of successful student executions. The first scenario was weapon retention against an armed opponent. Palmer demonstrated his technique, aggressive, strength-based, effective if you were big enough. When students tried it, 58% succeeded. Maya demonstrated her technique, balance control and angle manipulation that worked regardless of size. When students tried it, 87% succeeded. Palmer's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Second scenario was escape from rear chokehold. Palmer's method required significant upper body strength to break the hold. 62% student success rate. Maya's method used leg positioning and hip rotation to create escape opportunities that didn't require overpowering the opponent. 91% success rate. By the fourth scenario, even Palmer's loyal instructors were watching Maya's demonstrations with obvious interest, asking questions about mechanics, taking notes. The final scenario was the one Palmer had been waiting for: multiple opponent engagement. 2 attackers, no weapons, escape and evade without getting overwhelmed. Palmer's demonstration was violent and impressive. He used aggressive strikes to create space, overwhelmed both opponents with superior aggression, and cleared the threat through sheer combative intensity. It worked beautifully. When students tried it, 43% succeeded. The ones who failed were smaller soldiers who couldn't generate enough impact to deter 2 larger opponents. Maya's approach was different. She didn't try to overpower anyone. She used positioning to prevent both opponents from attacking simultaneously, created obstacles between herself and the second attacker while controlling the first, and used controlled techniques to disengage rather than defeat. When students tried it, 79% succeeded, including most of the smaller soldiers who'd failed Palmer's method. General Morrison consulted with the other board members, then stood. The results are clear. Master Sergeant Torres's techniques show higher success rates across all scenarios and across all student body types.
Command Sergeant Major Palmer, your techniques are effective for soldiers who match your physical attributes. Master Sergeant Torres's techniques are effective for all soldiers. That's the standard we need. Palmer's face went red. Sir, with respect, success in controlled training doesn't always translate to combat effectiveness. My techniques have been proven downrange, and they'll continue to be available to soldiers who choose to use them, Morrison interrupted. But Master Sergeant Torres's techniques will now be taught as primary curriculum across all special operations schools. Your methods will be taught as alternatives for soldiers who prefer strength-based approaches. We're not eliminating your contribution. We're expanding our soldiers' options.
CSM Bradford stood. General Morrison, I'd like to speak. He turned to Palmer. Ray, I've known you for 20 years. You're one of the finest instructors I've ever worked with. But watching this demonstration, I realized we've been teaching what works for us, instead of teaching what works for everyone. That's a failure of imagination, not a failure of commitment. He turned to Maya. Master Sergeant Torres, I was wrong to oppose your curriculum review. I was protecting institutional legacy instead of protecting soldiers. I'd like to request that you include Special Forces qualification course in your first round of instructor training. We need to update our methods, and we need your expertise to do it right. Palmer looked betrayed. Tom, you're siding with her? I'm siding with effectiveness. That's what we're supposed to do. Bradford's voice was firm. Ray, your pride is keeping you from seeing that she's not trying to destroy your work. She's trying to build on it. There's a difference. Palmer stood there, his entire worldview crumbling. Finally, he looked at Maya. I spent 18 years building a legacy, trained thousands of Green Berets, won awards, earned respect, believed I was preparing soldiers properly. And now you're telling me I could have done better. Maya spoke carefully. Command Sergeant Major, you did do better. Your techniques were the best available when you started teaching them. I'm just offering the next evolution. That doesn't invalidate what you've accomplished. It builds on it. Sounds like politics. Sounds like trying to make me feel better about being obsolete. You're not obsolete. Your experience, your understanding of how to teach under pressure, your ability to push students beyond their limits, that's all still valuable. I need instructors like you to help implement the new curriculum. But you have to be willing to learn new techniques instead of defending old ones. Palmer was quiet for a long moment. If I do this, if I learn your methods and help implement them, what happens to my legacy? Do I become the guy who had to be dragged into the 21st century? You become the guy who cared more about soldiers' lives than his own ego, Maya said quietly. That's a better legacy than being right. 2 weeks later, Maya stood in front of 40 senior combat instructors from across Army Special Operations. Palmer was there, sitting in the front row, looking uncomfortable but present. So was Cross from Ranger School, Bradford from Special Forces, and representatives from 165th SOAR, Civil Affairs, and Psychological Operations. Gentlemen, Maya began, we're here to learn updated hand-to-hand combat techniques that will become standard across all your schools. This isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about giving soldiers the best possible tools to survive when everything goes wrong. You're all experienced instructors with combat backgrounds and years of teaching. My job isn't to replace that experience, it's to add to it. For 2 weeks, she taught them, broke down techniques, explained mechanics, demonstrated why certain approaches worked better than others. Some instructors adapted quickly. Others struggled, their muscle memory fighting against new methods. Palmer was one of the strugglers. After a particularly frustrating session where he couldn't execute a technique properly, he stayed after class. I can't get this. My body won't move the way you're describing. Maya watched him try again, saw the problem. You're still trying to use strength as your primary tool. The technique requires you to use angle instead. It's a different mindset. I've been using strength for 40 years. How do I just stop? You don't stop. You add another option. Strength is still valuable, but sometimes angle is more effective. You need both in your toolbox. Palmer tried again, this time focusing on positioning rather than power. The technique worked. His expression was complex, frustration mixed with something like wonder. That actually worked. I didn't force it, it just worked. Because the technique is sound. You just had to trust it instead of fighting it. Over the next week, Palmer transformed. He stopped defending his old methods and started genuinely learning the new ones. And something unexpected happened. He became one of the best instructors in the group, using his decades of teaching experience to help other instructors understand the new curriculum. On the final day of training, General Harding visited to observe the instructors demonstrate what they'd learned. Palmer volunteered to demonstrate a complex technique that had given him trouble initially. He executed it flawlessly. Harding pulled Maya aside after. Command Sergeant Major Palmer requested a meeting with me yesterday. He asked to be assigned as your senior instructor trainer. He wants to help you implement this curriculum across all the schools. Maya was stunned. Sir, after everything he did to fight this, he realized he was wrong and decided to fix it. That's what good senior NCOs do. They admit mistakes and work to correct them. Harding paused. I'm approving his request. You'll have Palmer as your senior trainer. He'll help you manage the political aspects of implementation while you focus on technical training. 6 months later, the updated curriculum was being taught at every Army Special Operations school. Student performance metrics showed improvement across all categories. Injury rates during training decreased by 32%, and most importantly, after-action reports from deployed units showed increased success rates in close-quarters combat situations. Maya received a message from a Green Beret team sergeant deployed to an undisclosed location. Master Sergeant Torres, your technique saved my life yesterday. Compact raid went bad, hand-to-hand with a hostile who had 60 pounds on me. Used the angle control method you teach. Worked exactly like you said it would. Thank you. She saved that message along with a dozen others like it. This was why the fight had mattered. Not the promotions or the recognition or proving people wrong, but knowing that soldiers were coming home because they'd been taught techniques that actually worked when everything went wrong. Palmer found her reading those messages one afternoon. You know what the difference is between us? I taught soldiers to be as good as me. You taught soldiers to be better than me. That's why your curriculum works, and mine needed updating. Your curriculum worked, Command Sergeant Major. It just had limitations. All training has limitations. The question is whether instructors are honest enough to acknowledge them or proud enough to defend them. Palmer pulled out his phone, showed her a message. Got this yesterday from one of my former students. Said the new techniques gave him options he never had before. Said he wished he'd learned them earlier. How does that make you feel? Honestly, glad he's got better training now. And guilty that I fought giving it to him for so long. Palmer put his phone away. Torres, I owe you an apology. I tried to destroy your career because you threatened mine. That was cowardice disguised as defending standards. You apologized already, Command Sergeant Major. I apologized for being wrong. I'm apologizing now for being cruel. There's a difference. Palmer's voice was quiet. I told people you got your position through connections. I questioned your credentials publicly. I used my rank and reputation to make other instructors doubt you before they'd even met you. That wasn't defending training standards. That was defending my ego by attacking yours. Maya thought about how to respond. Command Sergeant Major, I've spent most of my career being questioned. Being told I didn't belong, didn't earn my position, was filling a quota. You weren't the first person to say those things, and you won't be the last. The difference is you eventually realized you were wrong and tried to make it right. Most people just keep defending their assumptions forever. That's generous, considering what I put you through. It's honest, considering where we are now. You're helping implement curriculum that's saving soldiers' lives. That's what matters. 1 year after the Fort Irwin incident with Ramsey, Maya received orders promoting her to Sergeant Major, the youngest in Army Special Operations Command history. The promotion ceremony was small, just General Harding and a few colleagues. But Palmer was there, along with Cross, Bradford, and, surprisingly, Cole Ramsey. Ramsey had spent the year teaching basic training at Fort Moore, had gone through remedial instructor training, and had reportedly become one of the most patient and effective teachers in the basic training brigade. After the ceremony, Ramsey approached her. "Congratulations, Sergeant Major. You've earned it." "Thank you, Command Sergeant Major. I heard you're doing well at basic training." "I'm teaching kids who've never been in a fistfight how to survive combat. It's humbling. Makes me realize how much I'd forgotten about what it's like to be new, to be scared, to not know if you're capable." Ramsey paused. "Torres, I was wrong about everything. Wrong about you, wrong about myself. Wrong about what makes someone valuable in this profession. I'm sorry for what I did, and I'm grateful you showed me there was a better way." Maya extended her hand. "We all get lost sometimes, Command Sergeant Major. What matters is finding your way back." That evening, Maya visited her father's grave one final time before heading to her new assignment at Special Operations Command headquarters. She stood at the headstone, reading the inscription she'd memorized. "Dad, I made Sergeant Major. Youngest in RSOC history. They're putting me in charge of all combatives training development across Special Operations." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Remember when you told me the standard is the standard? I spent years trying to meet that standard, trying to prove I belonged. But I realized something. The standard isn't just about meeting expectations. It's about raising them. It's about making sure the next generation has better tools, better training, better chances of coming home." She touched the cold stone. "I wish you could see this. Wish you could see that the lessons you taught me about consistency, competence, helping others meet the standard, they actually changed something." Soldiers are alive today because I fought to update training they'd been receiving. That's your legacy as much as mine. The wind picked up, moving through the trees surrounding the cemetery. Maya stood there another moment, then turned and walked back to her car. Her phone buzzed with a message from General Harding. "First assignment is Sergeant Major, Joint Service Instructor Development Program. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. We're standardizing hand-to-hand combat training across all special operations. You're in charge. Start Monday." Maya smiled. More resistance ahead. More instructors who'd fight change. More political battles and demonstrations and proving herself over and over. But also more soldiers with better training. More operators coming home because they'd learned techniques that worked when nothing else did. More lives saved because someone had the courage to say the old way wasn't good enough anymore. She texted back, "Understood, sir. I'm ready," because that was the truth her father had taught her. The truth she'd proven at Fort Irwin and Fort Moore and Fort Liberty and everywhere else people had tried to break her. The standard was the standard, and when the standard needed to be higher, you fought to raise it, not for recognition or promotions or proving anyone wrong, but because soldiers' lives depended on getting it right. Maya drove away from the cemetery toward a future where that fight would continue, where resistance would meet persistence, where institutional momentum would collide with undeniable effectiveness. And she knew, with the certainty her father had taught her to trust, that effectiveness would win. It always did. You just had to be willing to prove it as many times as necessary until no one could deny it anymore. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses